has the role of a daughter, she has the role of a sister, sister-in-law, aunt, all these grandmother, all these various roles women have. So all these connected relations comes within the sphere of domestic relationship. And when you speak about violence, it is not just physical violence, it is also emotional violence, it is also economic violence, it is also sexual violence. And when something which is happening within the domestic relationship or within the spheres of family, very often we keep quiet because that is what we are trained to do. Most women are not, it's not proper for a woman to speak out what she is facing to a third party, because if she does that, then she's not basically she is actually bringing disrepute to the family, because the family's honor is with the is supposed to be kept by the is supposed to be maintained by the woman of the family. So if you look at, and all of you would identify with these aspects. So when you look at it, what would constitute domestic violence? Physical violence is something so very easy. I mean, you can actually easily identify it by those physical marks on the face or on the body. But again, like if a father beats his daughter, the daughter is not going to go file a complaint at the police station. Is she going to do so? If the husband beats his wife, will she go file a complaint with the police station? She will not, because she does not want to kind of disrupt the family. If a brother hits his sister, will she go file a complaint against the brother? No. These are things. I mean, like you just, if you just internalize it and if you just look within yourself, will you do it? That is a question we generally ask ourselves. We are not suppose we don't do it. It's only when things go beyond a certain level, when it becomes unbearable, then you decide, okay, I need to do something about it. By that time, things could have really gone beyond, much beyond repair maybe. So that is how, so these are aspects. When it happens within the four walls of the house, it becomes domestic violence. And do we have a solution? Do we have a law to help? Yes, we do have a law. We have the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, domestic violence, and which came in the year 2005. And this particular legislation actually does not, prompt women to go file a petition in the court at the first instance. It allows various other bodies, like you have the protection officer, you have the service providers, who can kind of help the person making the complaint to kind of arrive at certain solutions through, it could be through counseling, it could be through mediation, it could be through talking, psychiatric counseling. You use all avenues. And if all that does not work, then maybe use the legal system to kind of help, to kind of come to a solution. Now, this is domestic violence. The protection of women from domestic violence is the least harmful of the legislation, and the least, what do you say, you know, is the most simpler to approach. You just need to go to a service provider who will be able to kind of assist you, or there is a protection officer in every district. You just need to go to the protection officer and they can assist you. They can assist you in getting the relief which you want. Okay. So and if suppose you don't have the financial capacity, the district legal service authority is there who will provide the necessary legal assistance. Now this is like, for immediate, when you call them protection orders, this is for those immediate protection reliefs which one can obtain from the magistrate court, and easily accessible to the common person. and it's not as if, I mean, like in the serials and in films, you see that, someone goes files a petition under the Domestic Violence Act, and then suddenly the police come and arrest the accused, that is the father or the brother, and then there is this huge crying and all that is nothing, not so much of drama at all. It is basically a very simple thing where it is more of a conciliation kind of thing rather than a accusatory or a adversarial kind of situation. So which each woman and it's precisely because you don't want to kind of break the family that the legislature in its wisdom tried to kind of evolve a system where you can you can try to resolve the issues through the through conciliation and mediation. And even if it comes to court, the mediation and counseling is the first option, or first medium which is resorted to. Okay, that is the thing. And now we have family courts. Now if suppose it is impossible to live with a person because of the violence, or because of the because two parties cannot live at all together, then you have the family courts which will allow for separation. And here again, you have to think about it rather not from the point of view of the society, but you have to think of the reliefs which a person or a woman is claiming from her point of view. Why is she approaching the courts? Why is she approaching the courts or the system for some kind of relief? It is because she does not feel safe, she does not feel protected enough, and she is approaching the system to help her. So what we, as as society, have to do is, instead of being judgmental about a woman approaching the system for getting the necessary release, we give her all kinds of support, understand why she is actually approaching the system for getting the relief she wants to. Right. Now, if we look at, so this is something which we talk about domestic violence. Let us look at the sexual violence aspect. Now, sexual violence, again, we get very agitated when we hear of incident which happens. Let's say a Nirbhaya happens, or a Hathras happens, or like in Kerala, Jisha happened. We get very agitated, and we wonder why the law is not really doing anything, or why despite laws being there, you still have women getting assaulted. And very valid question, why women why they get assaulted despite the law being there. But we also need to understand it, they are not being assaulted because people are scared about the law. They are getting assaulted because people know that the law will not be used. That is why people get emboldened enough to kind of do things which will get emboldened to do things which they feel that uh, something like a sexual assault. And when we talk about sexual assault, again, if all of us just look at it, most women would try to keep quiet about it. And I would like to kind of say, talk about the kind of abuse or assault which would happen in a bus, which is the most common, which most women are kind of afraid of, and would, like, take all precautions, especially in a bus. When you're traveling, you try to kind of be as safe and as secure as possible. And if you see, you will not if you just observe a women passenger in a bus, uh, you would see that most women passengers would be would crowd themselves around where around the driver's seat, or the first four seats, because it is supposed to be reserved for women, and the rest of the seats are supposed, I mean, then it kind of automatically we assume that it is for the men, but it is not automatically for the men. Those are the general seats. So even if sometimes those seats are vacant, you find that women may be hesitant to go and sit there. And why they are hesitant to sit there is because by chance, if something happens, by chance if something happens, then suddenly the question which comes is like, she asked for it. Why did she have to go and sit there? Why did she have? She knew that that is a place where usually men sit or men are crowding around. Why did she go there? So to avoid getting those kind of questions, or avoid facing those questions, or avoid getting the blame on her, women really keep quiet, because suddenly if a woman gets sexually assaulted, the kind of questions which are kind of raised is like, why was she walking around at that point of time? What was the kind of dress she was wearing? Was it tight? Was it sleeveless? What was the time which she was going around? Was she alone? These are some of the questions which are actually asked. And today, in the 21st century, when the state is supposed to be protective towards the women or provide all facilities for the women, to kind of when you don't even have proper street lights, when you don't have enough public transport for the women to travel around, and when you see things like that, state refusing to do what it is supposed to do, and then women get assaulted, then it is and the women get blamed for being assaulted because she walked out around that time of the night, then it's something, there is something wrong with the system. So that is what we have to kind of you know work against, or you have to, that those are those obstacles which one faces. So that's where we come in and we say that that it's not it's not the woman who is at fault, which all of us will understand. It is not the woman who is at fault. It is the system which has failed to provide the safety which was supposed to be there for women. Is there a law? There is a law. So now, how will the law activate itself? The law will activate itself. Will activate itself only when she files a complaint. Now, it is not going to happen that she gets sexually assaulted and she goes inside the house and keeps quiet. uh, the police are automatically going to come and arrest the accused, and he will get punished. That is not going to happen. She has to go through the system, and that is what is important. And if you look at all these cases, Nirbhaya, Jisha, Nirbhaya and Jisha and Hathras and all these people, the accused are in jail at this point of time because a complaint had been raised against them and action has been initiated against them. Okay, the court, and then it is important that we stand by her, we give her all kinds of support so that she will be able to withstand the trial and the entire process which one has to go through. Because once the trial starts, actually the court, the law has made it extremely comfortable for for a woman to actually face trial, because not like it used to be earlier, where very troubling questions could be asked, but now you cannot ask those troubling questions. It is monitored by the court, and there is a lot of monitoring happening, so that the trial happens in a very sensitive atmosphere. But again, what I would like to say is that, because there is this thing that you can manipulate the court, or you can manipulate the system, and you want to get out of jail, they try to kind of pressurize and make witnesses hostile, then it becomes a problem. So that is what we need to ensure as people, because you are all part of NSS, you are all part of the women's cell, you are all socially committed individuals who will be called upon to help people at different instances. What you will have to do as a duty, I feel, is to ensure that the person who is coming to you for help, whether it be domestic violence or sexual violence, give her as much support as possible, and give her as much protection as possible within the ambit of the legal system. And once that is provided, you can be rest assured that she will be protected, and she will get the justice which she should get. There is another thing which is something very important uh, part of when we talk about sexual violence, is one of very very mm, what do you say? A much talked about topic is the sexual harassment at workplace legislation, where you have to set up an internal complaints committee. I don't know if you have an internal complaints committee within your institution. If it's not there, you better get it instituted at the earliest, because it is a mandatory statutory obligation. What is this internal complaints committee? Internal complaints committee handles all sexual harassment complaints raised by a individual within that establishment, and the members are people within the same organization itself, so that matters can be sorted off in a very confidential manner. And when we're talking about sexual harassment workplace, this again, you don't have to go to the police station. You can kind of deal with it within your institution itself. So and when you are going out into your when you will be going out to your in the future for work and all that, it is very important that you have a safe space for work. For most women, if you see, their parents, again, even getting to work is a luxury. And if the organization which the person is going to work does not provide a safe environment for work, then she can always say goodbye to her career, because there are so many women who have left their jobs because the establishment which she was working has not been able to provide her a safe working space when she faced some kind of threat. And most women, instead of kind of challenging that, would actually decide to leave the work, and getting a job in this times is not a very easy thing. So if suppose you have a system where these things can be resolved at the institution itself, without too much of hangama, in a very confidential manner, I think it gives a very comfortable and positive outlook for women who are entering into the workforce. My sister works in Bangalore in a multinational company. And when I spoke to her about whether there is whether they have these systems in place, she said yes, yeah, we do have these systems in place. And if suppose some person kind of complains about an issue, it is taken very seriously. And that the way she was talking about it, I mean, it kind of reflected the kind of confidence she has in her organization. She's been working in that place for around more than 10 years, and she had that confidence in the organization to an organization that if she will be looked after, or she will be protected if something happens. That is the kind of confidence a woman needs to have when she enters the workspace. She needs to not fear about some vulture trying to kind of attack her, like constantly looking over her shoulders to see if she's safe. And rather to full put her full concentration in the work which she is allocated to do. And that is very important, and that the kind of freedom that gives, that is something which really frees a woman. And she can really can really empower the woman concerned. There have been instances, I mean, like within my in my legal fraternity itself, especially in corporate jobs, I have my colleagues who have kind of would stay at work till late, like at till 1 o'clock in the night, for finishing off their work. And the fact that they felt confident enough to stay, to meet deadlines, to sit and work till 1 o'clock in the night, means that if the organization which she is working in provides her that safe space, that is the kind of confidence we should have, which organizations should be able to provide for women. And that is what, as people as people who are working in the professional and technical field want that environment of safety and security, and the fact that a sexual harassment at workplace act provides for an internal complaints committee, and that needs to be set up. And if suppose that is there, it shows the commitment the organization or the establishment has towards the safety of women. And that is also part of those international rankings, also the safety rankings, or those ISO certifications which they have. If suppose you have these, all these systems have to be in place if you need to get those certifications. So these are aspects which we need to kind of look at and think about it. When we talk about laws relating to women, I often say that it's not a question of knowing what are the laws which we have for women. It is the question of using the laws which are there available for women, and not to feel uh, guilty or not to feel stigmatized for using those laws, because those laws are for the benefit of the woman. You look at the Dowry Prohibition Act. We've had the Vismaya case. The Vismaya case was it was a shocking incident. But if you look at it, we've had the Dowry Prohibition Act since 1964. So it's not as if that we did not have a law. It's not as if that we did not have any system. It is just that dowry giving and receiving, it was taken as, it was normalized so much that it was people the Dowry Prohibition Act actually penalizes both the giver and the taker. So definitely the girl is not going to file a complaint against her family, right? And usually the parents spend so much of money for getting the daughter married off. The daughters will think twice before she actually would complain to her family about the harassment which she is facing, especially on with relation to dowry. So that's all, and these are all aspects of domestic violence again. Now, the fact that we put a lot of prevalence on marriage, that the families, as soon as a daughter is born, the parents suddenly, for them, the only thing in their minds is like to get her married and to arrange for the dowry. As long as the mental attitude of the society does not change, we will continue to have instances like Vismaya. Vismaya became sensationalized, but Uttara became sensationalized. All this is all for demand for money. But once everything dies down, it will still continue to happen if the societal attitude does not change. And societal attitude does not change in the Varaimateka. The daughters, the parents of daughters should not feel that they have to give money, or they have to cater to someone's extortionist demands, and to give confidence to their daughters to say no to these kind of, to bring their daughters up in an empowered state of mind to say no to these kind of demands. Only then can you have a only then can we not have a repeat of instances like Vismaya and Uttara. So this is something which is very important. And because as as lawyers, we know the law. So people are generally kind of, they feel kind of they'll think twice about talking to women lawyers with respect to these things. But then people who are within the technical field, who are not really aware about all these legislations, can get easily you know pulled into it. And that is something which has you call it gender sensitization or gender awareness. It's not a question of just chumma saying, it's not a question of just objecting to anything. All women should have an idea, should be economically empowered enough to economically, I mean, that should be the goal, rather than getting married. All of you have, I mean, I can see a lot of women here who are part of the NSS. And as soon as you come out of college, I know your parents will be trying to push you to get married. But believe me, getting married, uh, uh, getting married should not be the goal of your the end goal or the future, the goal of your life. Your life goal should be to kind of stand on your own feet, because if you're able to stand on your own feet, if you're economically you are standing on your own feet without support from your parents, you can be rest assured that you will be able to face any kind of conflicts which come within you. Because marriage and all, you need to get married to a person, and all women need to understand that you need to get married to a person who understands you, not because that person is belongs to a particular caste, or who is aligning to the family and things like that. That does not, because all those are external factors. If only if that person is able to understand you, give you the respect and the dignity, only that person will be able to understand you, and you will be able to carry on with your life. These are things which no one really talks about. I mean, you feel that these are all idealistic talks, but this is extremely essential. Because when you talk about domestic violence, or when you talk about sexual violence, the underlying factor therein is the fact that there is no respect or dignity to the woman. If because when where there is no respect or dignity to the woman, you will find instances of domestic violence, and you will find rapid instances of sexual violence. And because these are happening within the family, you kind of normalize them, and you think that it is okay because this is happening in the family, and you try to brush it inside under the carpet. But the thing is, those brushing under the carpet actually creates more damage to the individual than anything else. So there are laws. So what I want to tell all of you is that there are laws which will help you. There are laws, or there are systems which will help people, and organizations like you are there to kind of support women in need. What you need to understand is that, to keep it in mind, is that women, you need to instead of putting our judgments on the women concerned, the women have to you need to support the woman for whatever choices she makes, because she has the right to decide what is best for her, not you deciding for her, not anyone else deciding for her. The woman has, I mean, we need to give her, because she as soon as she is born, this girl, when she becomes an adult, she has every right to decide what she wants, which is guaranteed to us in the constitution. It is one of our fundamental rights, and we need to allow her to exercise that, and rather than getting bogged down by what societal conditions and societal attitudes ask for. So this is what I want to tell, kind of, I want to kind of talk to you about, because these are things which don't really we don't really give too much of attention to, but these are so core to our basic life, and which kind of impacts our day-to-day existence, and even how we interact with others. So thank you, all of you, once again. If you have any doubts or any clarifications, please let me know. I'm there to help kind of answer.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
So it's to ask questions. So you can drop your questions either in the chat box or you can open your mic and feel free to ask.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am, many countries has been implementing death penalties for rape, assaults, and all. Do you
Yeah.
think a death penalty is a sustainable solution against sexual misconduct or rape, assault?
See, I know sexual assault, when you talk about rape or sexual assault, it's a very emotional issue. And as women, many women would want to see the death penalty be implemented. But as a lawyer and a lawyer, I feel that death penalty is not really the solution, and because the law, death penalty, the more rigorous the punishment, the more the courts will try to kind of see how you can avoid giving that person death penalty. So death penalty does not really solve the issue of solve the issue of sexual assault. It's not as if that just because death penalty is there on the statute book, sexual assault will stop. uh, Death penalty has been there for murder from since the 18th century, but has not prevented people from committing murders. So death penalty is not an answer, not at all an answer, and I feel we need to get away from that mindset that death penalty will be a solution.
So I think there are no more questions. We can wind up the session. So to propose the vote of thanks, now I call upon Aditya. Aditya, please.
മനസ്സ് നന്നാവട്ടെ. A warm good evening one and all. It is my privilege to propose a word of thanks and acknowledge the contribution of those who worked hard to make this event possible. On behalf of NSS Unit 168 and 263 and Women's Cell GCW, I give a real heartfelt thanks to our chief guest, Advocate Sandhya Raju ma'am, who spent her busiest time gracing the occasion. Today, we had the opportunity to hear your thoughts, and I think this would definitely encourage us in our future. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing information about legal rights, especially about women's rights. A special thanks to Anju ma'am, Faculty Coordinator, Women's Cell GCW. And I also take this opportunity to thank all the volunteers who worked hard behind to execute this session, especially Sri Lakshmi, Aparna, Malavika, Praveena, and Anjusha. I also thank volunteers who worked hard to make the event of Aviana, our street play, possible. And thanks for all the participants. And I also thank Afra, Sangeeta, Irene for making the session active. Once again, a great thanks to all the volunteers who participated in the session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aditya. So once again, I would like to express my gratitude to all those involved in making this session a huge success. Before I conclude, I would like to inform you that a feedback form is presently running in the chat box, and also so kindly fill it and avail your participation certificate and attendance. So thank you. The session has come to an end.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.